Welcome or welcome back to day 80 of our chess journey to 1500 ELO on chess.com. Let's just jump on ahead and find an opponent. So who are we getting today then? We get Elias 1116 from the US. So what will they play? 1e4, 1d4, 1c4. We get 1e4 and we will play the Sicilian. Let's come up here. Do we get another open Sicilian? Seems like we might. Knight to c3 and we get the Najdorf. Which variation though? Honestly, it's probably not quite ideal for me to be playing the Najdorf right now, considering I don't remember the theory here, but it will help us, I guess, in the long term, as it will help with getting experience in this opening, despite me not remembering the theory right now. I think e6 looks okay here. Blunting the bishop, preparing to develop our own bishop. Let's play it. We get an open Sicilian Scheveningen Sosin attack, I guess. I swear there are so many openings in chess, it's bizarre. So what will our opponent play? One of the reasons I like playing the Najdorf right now is because we do get a few easy moves in the start, or at the start rather, and we end up with more time than in other positions. Although the main reason I do prefer playing the Najdorf is because I just love the positions. It seems like a fun opening. So our opponent is taking their time and they decide to castle. What do we do here? I'm seeing b5, bishop to e7, knight to c6, or queen to c7 as candidate moves. My first intuition here is probably playing knight to c6 or b5. I think in similar positions we have played knight to c6 before. I would like to play b5 here and then maybe play our knight to d7. So let's go for it. The bishop is likely to come back here to b3. We get development with our bishop onto b7. And this pawn will be hit. We might see rook to e1. f3 seems unlikely. The bishop comes here. Quite logical, defending this pawn. I think we can still come up with our own pawn though, and we might have b4 here to get to dislodge the knight rather and win this pawn afterwards, depending on what our opponent plays, of course. Just making sure there is no e5 here, but I'm not seeing it. So let's just develop our bishop. We do get this move. Do we have b4 here? Or is that a bit too greedy of a pawn grab? Here, where can the knight go? There is this annoying maneuver of going to a4, looking to come onto b6. But b6 is covered by our queen, so that's not an idea. If we push, there is no forwards mobility, so I guess e2 is the move. So we push the pawn, the knight comes to e2. We can take this pawn with the bishop, I think, because I'd like to reposition the bishop over to our king side, and if the bishop takes, we take with the knight, and we will have removed a potential attacker here. Yeah, I was looking quickly at knight, queen to b6 rather, but there is the simple move, bishop to e3, messing up that plan. So let's come up here, and hopefully we should win a pawn. If our opponent dodges the bishop trade, I think we drop back to g6 here with our own light squared bishop defending our king. I don't think e5 is a move here, because we take the knight. If they take our knight, we take the pawn, they take the pawn. Honestly, this might get a bit complicated. More so than I would have preferred. Takes, takes. But then I think we can take with our queen, and our opponent has to destroy their structure, whereas we keep ours intact, which I think looks okay. Just scanning for additional tactics, but I'm not seeing any. So let's take here. I'm thinking we only take once, because once this pawn falls, we are in dubious territory. If we take here, this knight will be targeted. So they can't, well, they can take, but still I don't think I like the position for our opponent after this. Let's come up. Just double checking, and I think this will be played. The king dodges us. Our opponent sets up a trap here. If we take the knight, they check with the bishop and win our queen, which we don't want to happen, of course. So what do we do here? Do we just take this pawn first? Then they will take with the bishop. That doesn't seem ideal. How about knight to c6, hitting this knight? If knight takes, we take with the bishop. And then we can take this pawn here if they do take ours. I think I prefer this, so let's go up here and go for it. Now, what happens if the pawn takes first here? Well, that's playable, but their structure is broken. Now I don't think we have to take the knight. Instead, I'm going to argue for playing bishop to e7, I think. We don't want to push pawns in the center, because of our exposed king. If we take here, they will take with the pawn. We still can't take because of this discovery. Checking our king, so that's no good. We will play bishop to e7 and prepare castling. So the material is even here, but we have gotten some awkward structure first for our opponent. The bishop sets up on this diagonal. I guess we can expect c4 at some point. What happens if we castle? If the knight takes and we take with the bishop, this pawn push is not really threatening. We take the bishop. So I think it's time to castle and get out of the center. Just once again double checking that we don't hang the game. Losing 75,000 pieces in a single move is less than ideal. You all know you have played in positions before. Where you have been in a good position and suddenly lose. I just got distracted for a second because I'm realizing I can't see our opponent's clock. Where is their clock? How much time do they have here? I don't know. Oh, there we go. It was invisible for some reason. Why was the clock invisible? Might be a new bug on chess.com. Queen to h5 might be a move for our opponent. Trying to play for a quick checkmate. h6 should work, I think. Still, this bishop is a bit annoying. I would like to get it out of the game. This pawn is pushed. So what is our ideal response? I would like to advocate for taking the knight here first, but then they can take, hitting our queen. Then we can take with our queen though and dodge the attack. I don't like taking because they come in here and hit us. And we don't want to be hit, no one really does. e5 might be playable, although it would weaken our structure ever so slightly. But is it good? e5, and we could play an opportune f6 at some point, which Ben Feingold would love. But I think playing with those center pawns here might be strong. Just pushing past this annoying pawn. But let's just calculate this first. If we take the knight, they take here, we take the pawn with the queen. The problem here is once c4 is played, there will be two powerful bishops and a rook just staring down at their king, and the queen could join in. And I don't quite like the follow-ups. I'd like to keep this a bit more closed, which is why I will be playing e5. We have to take back, and what does our opponent do now? Queen to g5 threatens a checkmate for us. But our queen would be somewhat offside. Let's see, queen to g5. The pawn can't be pushed, so it will have to be defended probably by the opponent's queen, which would just help them double up rooks while getting a free move. I don't quite like that. However, no, d5 doesn't quite seem to work. I think I like this a bit because after the queen moves we could close up our structure. I don't think there is a queen trap, or is there? If the bishop drops back, I don't like our lack of squares. So instead here, d5 is a move I'm looking at, which will close down our bishop though. The problem is I don't like this backwards pawn. I would like to bring the pawns back together. Or we could play a rook out. So that's either going to be a rook a to b8 or rook f to c8. Alternatively, I'm realizing we have bishop to b5, eliminating an opposing bishop. Our pawn here will end up on b5, unless they push their pawn. Let's say we go to b5 and they push the pawn. I don't quite like the following position, to be honest. So maybe coming here first will allow for that idea, while also developing a rook, because now we will have another piece contesting the c4 square. What does our opponent do here? Does the g-pawn move? It can't because it's pinned. The queen could try to join in, or c4 could be played in this position, which wouldn't quite be ideal, but sometimes it is what it is. What else could be played? The queen comes out here. Is there a threat? How about queen to g5? Trying to force a queen trade. And we get our bishop out if they trade. I think I like queen to g5 here. Our opponent can't come here and create threats because we checkmate, so the queen trade should be forced unless they want to play back with the queen, which I think would favor us as well. Let's come up here. We will pre-move here because that's the only real response if they take. And what is the intended follow-up? Our bishop is finally outside of our pawn chain rather. f6 is playable at any point here, meaning this bishop has no good attack. Well, this pawn here is hit. f6 is not that powerful, I'm realizing. d5 is playable. If they push their pawn, we can push ours to d4, I think. And I think I like the following position. We do still have 5 minutes here, so let's try to have another look at this. Let's have another look here. We could come back and defend the pawn. That's a bit passive. We don't really solve any problems. Our rook could defend the pawn. I'm not quite convinced. Now we have to make take in mind, make a mental note here. The rook just opened up, and our opponent might want to play here. But I don't think that's a problem. Let's see, we come here, the rook comes down. We might lose a pawn there though. This is a bit trickier than I expected it to be. Do we have a way of saving all of our material? We might not have so. I still think here we want to come up, and we can play for the D or C3 pawn rather. With this square, we could push up our pawns, E4 for example, trying to create a powerful passed pawn, or F6 to solidify our structure. Rook here is likely to be played. It's not though, which I'm quite happy to see. Now it's still a threat, but not as much of a threat if we take here. Three minutes left. If we take, we lose our structural advantage. I think I like to push, but then rook to b6, but then we don't lose the pawn because now our opponent's bishop is blocked. So I think this looks good. Our rooks need to be improved though, because currently they are staring at practically nothing. Maybe rook c to b8. We get this powerful outpost. Our opponent probably wants to play c5. Do we play f6 here to defend our pawn and allow c4? Or c5 rather? If they play c5, we get d5 for our own bishop. But then this pawn might be weak. Still, I think this is okay. It will open up a diagonal here, but I don't see a better approach, to be honest. The king moves. Can we come up here with our bishop? I think that's okay. Forcing the king back and centralizing further. And then I think we can't play onto b8 with a rook because of this bishop now. How about bishop to a4? That does nothing. Okay, then what else could we play? Maybe rook to d8. Then this will be played. We will move our bishop up and we will trade a pawns. This seems okay, I think. Let's come here and see what our opponent does in response. They push, but now we have this. We threaten an a-pawn. Our a-pawn is not currently threatened, but it could get threatened quite easily. This pawn might be pushed. We could push our own a-pawn. This game here is just a game of bishop outposts. At some point taking this bishop might be worthwhile, even if doing so with a rook. I think a5 looks good here, so we don't sit in the scope of this bishop. Now we do have to be careful of c7 for our opponent's bishop though. So if the rook comes down to b5, making a mental note here, if the bishop could come to c7 and threaten the pawn, so we do have to cover this square here. Or honestly, we could play bishop to d2 as well. This looks powerful. It closes down this file. This pawn on c3, or c2 rather, can't be pushed because of our pawn on d4 then. So that's quite optimistic, to be honest. We could hang out on c3 or on b4, and I don't see an easy way of dislodging our bishop to c7. That seems a bit premature, but it might still be good. How about we just drop back here? Our opponent is likely to drop back. No, they will reposition onto b6. So which square is best? I think I'd like to keep our rooks connected for the time being. The bishop will land here, and we will come down here, so they can't easily win our pawn. Now this pawn can be targeted from behind by playing bishop to b4. So currently our bishops are beasts, but our rooks, though, they are not quite ideal right now, but they might become beasts later on. I'm looking at rook a to b8 here, simply to allow us to take the pawn, because no, the rook won't be hanging because of the other rook, I'm realizing. Our bishop is hit. How about coming back here and hitting their pawn? This looks convincing. What does our opponent play here? I don't think there is a way to defend this pawn. Our opponent can't add another defender. So I think we just won a c-pawn. There is still another c-pawn, but we could just come back to b4 here and target this pawn with our rooks, I think. Now we get this crafty move. But can't we just en passant? This looks convincing. Let's play it. The bishop slides in. I think we can take here. If they take, we take, come up and defend our pawn. If they target our pawn, I think we come back to b4 and defend it. So currently we have two passed pawns, which should bring us quite the evaluation advantage. I'm realizing here our bishop on d5 is hanging. If it's taken, we can take this bishop, so luckily this works out in some way, tactically, but it is an important note to make here. Well, we do get this, they take, so we are forced to take here. Let's play with this pawn. Do we push it? I think we come here first to hit this rook, maybe allowing us to push. No, we can't. Yeah, that's a mistake actually. That's not ideal, but let's come here instead then. Defending our pawns. And we'll see if we can find another way of coming in here. The bishop hits us, but now it pins itself. Surely that's not good, right? We can come further towards the center. This rook is hanging. Will they trade or will they move it? They opt to move it, but now we could come over here. Let's have a look here. If they come here, takes. This looks good. This will allow us, I think, to get our rooks into the game finally. Or well, we do get this though. So I think we take, simplify down to one pair of rooks, which should favor us, I think. Let's bring our rook over here. Now let's bring it behind this pawn so we can maybe move our bishop, I think. What is our ideal setup? Maybe bringing this pawn up here first to threaten a second promotion. The king can't come forwards right now, so let's come up ourselves. Rook to e2, and then we can push our pawn, I think. The rook can never really move here. h5. g4 might be played, but then their structure is broken. They do still want to force it. Then how about we come in here and hit this f-pawn. That doesn't really work. I'm not seeing a better move right now, so let's come up still. They push. We have to take. The king comes in. Let's come behind this pawn and push a second pawn here. This does look promising. The h-pawn might move, but then we just take it. With king to h5, trying to come down to g6 and take our pawn, we just take this pawn first, which does look winning to me. Currently, all of our pawns are on dark squares, apart from this, so their bishop can't target them. We'll push up here and see how our opponent stops our pawns. The rook can't come to d2 because it's controlled by the pawns. Push takes, push. The bishop should be able to control the c1 square at the end. Or the bishop takes. I missed that bishop for some reason. Got a bit too rushed, but still this should be good. Let's take a pawn first and then see where we go from here. We go to Blundertown, I guess. We are currently forked. Is there a tactical defense here? The best I'm seeing might be taking the bishop, or rather pinning it. We will lose our own bishop. This is incredibly unfortunate. Let's push here. I'm really hoping that does not lose us the game, which it very well might. Now we play for this pawn. Let's keep the bishop pinned, although it's not, yeah, I guess it's pinned, but the rook can take our pawn though. Let's threaten their pawn, cut off the king. The bishop comes down to b5. Oh, it goes up there. How about sliding on over here? I'm not convinced. Maybe pushing the pawn first. No, this is really bad. No. Can we salvage this position? No, they will just take the pawn because of the bishop as well. Okay, so for us to win here, we have to win the a-pawn. But it's defended by the bishop, so how do we do it? Or to win, to draw rather. We want to draw. No, this is good, I think, because our pawn can't be targeted. So I think it's good. I hope so, at least. This might be losing because the a square is a white square. It's the same color as their bishop. I'm hoping it's not, though. I don't quite know my endgames that well. It's unfortunate we don't win this game, but we might still have a draw, although I'm not quite certain. Oh, this is good technique. This is great technique by our opponent. We can't come forwards. They force us away from our own pawn, and we can't take theirs. The king's going to move up, and we will lose our own pawn promptly. Oh no, maybe not, maybe not. Now they can just move the bishop here, and we will be forced to move away. Yeah, that's good. Well played to our opponent here. Really well played. We cannot move anywhere. At least not anywhere that would help us. The pawn will be lost here, and our opponent can force the pawn promotion. So let's resign. Thanks for the game. Incredibly well played to our opponent. They showed us some really good endgame technique. Let's resign. And now I'm onto my second account here to press game review, because I don't have my daily game review on the primary account here. The game review has been pressed, so let's come in here and we should be able to analyze the game. Apparently it has to load through on the other end first for the game review to be recognized. Let's try reviewing now. There we go. This was an unfortunate graph. We had a great game until we did not. Let's have a look through our moves here and see how we should have played. A Sicilian, the Najdorf, this was all good. We got a pretty decent position here. This was a blunder because of takes. What happens if takes? Yeah, this was just missed by both of us. Yeah, that's a bit unfortunate. Well, it is what it is. We did still find a way here of apparently getting a losing position up a pawn. Still, we did get back into a decent position here. This was all good for us. Pushing the pawn was good. Or here we should have taken actually. If takes, we have this. I'm seeing I'm missing a lot of tactics here. I haven't quite had time to work on the tactics recently, as my life outside of chess here, or of those videos here, has been quite turbulent. Still, we did maintain a decent position. This was decisively winning. The best move here was a fork. I did not see this fork at all, but it would have won us the game, I'm pretty sure. They can't take here because we get a queen, and we back rank mate them. If we had seen c2 here, it would have been game over. Still, this was just decisively winning, and it would have been a pretty comfortable grind. We did maintain the lead here, and soon I played a good blunder here, namely a e3 I think, or e2. It was e2 actually. Yeah, this was the move. Should have just taken here. If this was played, we had this. Yeah, it's unfortunate. I calculated here and I just missed the existence of the bishop. But still we did have a winning position though. But not here. Because why was this still okay? Check on f4, d5, and I guess the computer argues we have enough pawns as compensation. I didn't see this under time pressure, meaning in all practical terms this capture here was a blunder. Instead, we had a lot of moves that worked. Checking here, coming up to d6, going to do d7 even. All yielded great results apparently. Here we had one move only, which is kind of a computerish line. So instead we played and lost this game. We didn't really have any chance here apparently to draw. Our opponent showed us great technique and we lost this game. Well, this is another incredibly high rated opponent compared to us, so I don't quite mind it, but it is unfortunate that despite us getting winning positions against higher rated opponent, I do find ways of blundering the game. I'm hoping that will end at some point as we improve, but as for now, we do lose some games. Well, once again, thanks a lot for the game Elias1116 from the US. Thank you for watching to the end of the video, guys. This has been our game for today, and I hope to see you all tomorrow. Bye bye.